Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time. Please step back from the gate, the sheriff said firmly. Karen, arms flailing in her pastel robe and flip-flops, was practically foaming at the mouth. No, I'm not stepping anywhere until you arrest him. He turned off my water. He's a danger to the neighborhood. The deputy raised an eyebrow and looked at me, then back at her. Ma'am, this is his ranch. That water line doesn't even connect to your house. Karen stomped her foot like a child denied ice cream. I don't care. I use that water. I always have. He doesn't have the right to just turn it off. It was 7:03 a.m. The sun had barely cracked the horizon, casting golden light over my 30-acre ranch. Horses were grazing peacefully in the distance. But here at the front gate, there was anything but peace. 2 cop cars were idling behind Karen's dented minivan, their lights flashing. A few of my neighbors stood by the fence in their robes and hoodies holding coffee cups, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Do you want to press charges, Mr. Miller? The sheriff asked me. Before I could even answer, Karen screamed, He assaulted me with a wrench! I blinked. A wrench? That was the last straw. I opened my mouth to speak, but just then, Karen lunged toward me through the gate. And that's when... Cliffhanger. Let me tell you how we got here. My name is Jacob Miller, and I'm a 41-year-old retired firefighter from Phoenix. After 20 years of running into burning buildings and saving lives, I bought a ranch in northern Arizona. Something quiet, far from city chaos, to raise horses and grow old in peace. Or at least that was the plan. I'm not married, never had kids. But I do have 2 dogs, Gunner and Sage, who are better company than most humans I've met. They don't talk back, they protect the land, and they never call 911 because I turned off my own water line. You'd think a ranch this remote wouldn't have HOA issues, but oh, you'd be wrong. Enter Karen Brewster. Karen moved into the Sunset Ridge Estates subdivision a few years ago, a group of homes built awkwardly next to my ranch's southern border. They marketed the area as luxury rural living, which is a fancy way of saying, you're close enough to smell cows, but don't actually own land. Karen was in her mid-50s with bleach blonde curls, permanent sunglasses on her head, and a habit of wearing high heels in the dirt. She called herself the president of the Sunset Ridge HOA, but I later found out it was just a made-up title. There was no official HOA registered, just a Facebook group and a handful of bored neighbors pretending to be in charge of something. For the first year, we were civil. Karen would wave from her white SUV when she passed by my gate. She brought me muffins once. I didn't eat them. Then things started getting weird. It began when she asked if she could borrow my private well water to fill her koi pond during a drought. I politely declined. That didn't sit well. She came back with a folder of printouts, claiming some legal right from a map she found online. I laughed, told her to talk to my lawyer, and that was that. Until she started walking across my land without permission, checking the irrigation. I had enough. I installed security cameras and a reinforced gate. What I didn't know was that somewhere along the line, Karen had been sneaking a hose under my fence, tapping into an old side spigot I hadn't used in years. It fed into one of my barns but was shut off after I replumbed the system. Somehow she'd reconnected it and had been using it to water her lawn. My water. On my land. When I found the hose running through the brush, it had been leaking for days. So I did what anyone with common sense would do. I turned off the main valve connected to that line and capped it. The very next morning, today, Karen showed up at my gate, screaming like someone had stolen her dog. I have the right to that water. It runs through the land we share, she yelled. We don't share land, Karen, I said. This is my ranch. Your subdivision is over that fence. She pointed at my water meter like it was some ancient artifact. You don't own the water underground. I actually do. I paid to drill the well. The pipe you're using is my private line. Her face turned bright red. That's theft. That's tampering with a utility. It's not a utility. It's my well. She dialed 911 in front of me. I'm reporting a crime, she said into her phone, glaring at me like she'd caught me lighting her house on fire. Hello? Yes. There's a man tampering with water lines, and he threatened me with a wrench. I feel unsafe. Please send help." By the time the cops pulled up, she was already sobbing dramatically at my gate. "It's elder abuse," she cried. "He's hurting me emotionally and destroying public access to water." The deputies didn't look impressed. "Ma'am, he owns this property," the younger one said. "Your house is in a different subdivision." "But it's all part of the same watershed," she snapped. "There are frogs in distress." I could barely contain my laughter. That's when she claimed I assaulted her with a wrench, which was in my truck untouched because I used a valve key instead. She screamed again, "You need to cuff him. You're not doing your job." The sheriff sighed. "Ma'am, step away from the gate." "I will not. He's a threat to the community." She stomped toward the gate, reached through the bars, and she lunged at me. And then, crack. The sound wasn't from a punch or a hit. It was from Karen's knee slamming into the bottom metal rail of my ranch gate. She collapsed backward with a dramatic wail that echoed across the ranch like a dying banshee. "My leg! My leg! You broke it!" she shrieked, rolling in the gravel like an overpaid soap opera actress. The two officers rushed forward. One crouched beside her, looking more annoyed than concerned. "Ma'am, you hit your leg on the gate. No one touched you." "I want him arrested. He lured me here and attacked me," she cried, pointing one trembling, over-manicured finger at me. The other officer turned to me. "Did you touch her, Mr. Miller?" "No, sir. I stood still the entire time," I replied calmly. "My security cameras caught everything if you'd like to review the footage." Karen's eyes widened slightly, and I knew right then that she realized the game was up, at least for now. But instead of backing down, she switched tactics. "My brother is an attorney," she snapped, wobbling up to her feet now that the theatrics weren't working. "And he's going to sue you for violating state water sharing laws." I almost laughed. "Is that before or after he reads the part of the deed where it says this is private ranch property with private utilities?" She stomped away toward her minivan, muttering curses under her breath. But I knew better than to assume this was over. No, this was just the beginning. Let me back up a bit again, because it helps to understand how we ended up in a full-blown HOA war over water of all things. Karen wasn't always like this. When she first moved in, she came across as friendly, even helpful. She baked cookies, hosted book club meetups under a tree in her front yard, and handed out flyers about neighborhood cleanup days. She even offered to watch over my ranch while I was away at a wedding in Texas. I thought it was neighborly kindness, but over time, the favors turned into expectations. She assumed she could borrow things without asking. One day, she led her grandkids onto my pasture like it was a public park. They spooked my horses and almost got kicked. When I gently told her to ask for permission next time, she pouted and replied, "You're not very community-minded, Jacob." I thought it would blow over. Then she started leaving passive-aggressive notes in my mailbox. Little things like, "Your horse's droppings are seeping into our air." "The way you trim your trees affects our property values." "You should be more open to collaborating with Sunset Ridge HOA for water efficiency." I ignored her. Big mistake. That's when I found the hose. An old irrigation line near my fence had been tampered with. At first I thought it was an animal, but the clear plastic garden hose running under the shrubs told a different story. I followed the hose with Gunner and Sage trotting beside me, sniffing curiously. It led straight across the gravel road and into Karen's backyard, where a sprinkler system had been quietly humming. I cut the hose clean in two, capped the spigot, and made a mental note to check every connection on my property. I wasn't angry at that moment, just disappointed. But the next morning there was a note duct-taped to my gate. "You're not the only one who needs water. Shame on you. The HOA will be contacting you." She must have been up before sunrise. That's when I realized I needed to act. Legally. I contacted my lawyer, David Holloway, an old buddy from my fire department days who specialized in property rights. David laughed for nearly a full minute after I told him the story. She used your water without permission and then threatened you? Jacob, this is a textbook trespass and theft of resources. He drafted a formal cease and desist letter, and I had it hand-delivered by a local courier. But that just lit the fuse even more. Karen didn't back down. She got louder. She printed flyers warning others in Sunset Ridge about my dangerous behavior. She accused me of hoarding natural resources and claimed I was trying to monopolize the land. But here's the thing. Her home wasn't even on my property. Her subdivision wasn't connected to my well. The only connection was that secret hose she'd snuck under my fence line. Still, she wasn't satisfied. That's when she showed up again, this time with a clipboard and a measuring tape. She stood at the edge of my ranch fence muttering numbers to herself, then loudly declared that 2 feet of my fence was technically HOA land. I chuckled. Karen, unless the state redrew the lines overnight, you're wrong. We'll see about that, she barked, flipping her phone up to record me. You'll be hearing from our attorney. That was 2 days before the water valve incident. So when I turned off the old line she'd been using illegally, and she called 911, it all exploded. Now, after the dramatic gate lunge and her mini scene in front of the cops, I thought maybe the whole thing would fizzle out. But it didn't. That very night, as the sun was setting and I was tossing hay into the horses' troughs, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Mr. Miller, the voice said with a slick tone. This is attorney Brian Brewster representing the Sunset Ridge Estates HOA and my client Karen Brewster. Let me guess, I said. You're also her brother. There was a long pause. Yes, he admitted. And I'd like to inform you that if you do not restore access to the water line by tomorrow morning, we will be filing a temporary injunction for shared property usage and emergency utility rights. I laughed out loud. You're threatening to sue me for turning off a water line on my land that she tapped into without permission? We believe this situation is part of a larger community concern, he replied, voice tightening. We're prepared to bring this before a judge. I paused, staring out at my peaceful field. Well then, Brian, I guess I'll see you in court. But I didn't know then that Karen wasn't planning to wait for court. Because the next morning, I woke up to the sound of a backhoe. Yes, a construction backhoe, on my land, and that's when... Where do you think this is going? Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. I leapt out of bed, still half asleep, threw on my boots and ran outside, shirtless, hair messy, with my 2 dogs barking like mad. And there it was, a full-sized yellow backhoe rolling across my pasture like it had been invited to brunch. Dust flew behind the wheels as it carved a deep trench right near the old sideline, the same one I'd shut off and capped. A man in a hard hat sat at the controls, cool as a cucumber, digging a trench as if this were a city construction zone. Behind him, Karen, in a robe again, but this time paired with a wide-brimmed sun hat and oversized sunglasses, holding a clipboard and pointing dramatically like she was commanding a battlefield. My jaw dropped. "Hey!" I shouted, storming toward the fence line. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen didn't even flinch. The backhoe operator paused, turned off the engine, and stood up in the cab. "You Jacob Miller?" he asked calmly. "Yeah, and you're trespassing on my ranch." He shrugged. "Lady said she owns this strip of land and has permission to access buried water lines. She showed me a document." I laughed. "You're digging a trench on someone else's private property based on a printout?" I waved my arm. "This is my land, and that woman has zero authority here." Karen stepped forward, waving her clipboard. "This land is under emergency community ordinance. There's a water crisis, and I'm invoking public access code." "That's not a real thing," I snapped. "You made that up." "Call the sheriff," she shouted back. "Let's settle this once and for all." "Already on it," I muttered, grabbing my phone. Within minutes, Sheriff Tucker and his deputy rolled back onto the property. Tucker rubbed his temples when he saw the trench, the backhoe, and Karen scribbling wildly on her clipboard like she was preparing to auction off the ranch. "Karen," he sighed. "What did we talk about yesterday?" "She's insane," I said bluntly. "This is criminal trespass. I want everyone off my land, now." Tucker looked at the operator. "Sir, did you get permission in writing?" The man hesitated. She gave me a printed document, looked official. Tucker reached for the paper, skimmed it, and then held it up. "This is a Home Depot invoice taped to a printout from Google Earth." "It represents the property line," Karen screamed. "You're just letting him bully me." The sheriff looked at me. "You want to press charges now?" I paused. Part of me wanted to scream, "Yes." But deep down, I knew Karen was itching for drama. She wanted to be the victim. Not yet. "Just get them off my land," I said, "and tell that machine to fill the trench it just made. I'll deal with the rest." Karen shouted all the way back to her SUV. "You haven't seen the last of this. The people have a right to water." But I didn't laugh, because I was too busy staring at what she'd uncovered. The trench had clipped a buried pipe, an old PVC line I hadn't used in years. Except, it wasn't just a pipe. It was connected to a shallow electrical conduit I'd installed when I first moved in, back when I considered adding a pump system for solar-powered sprinklers. The entire section was supposed to be shut down and sealed off. But now it was cracked wide open, wires exposed and glinting in the sunlight. Sparks flickered at the break. "Oh no," I muttered, backing away slowly. Before I could even yell, "Pop!" A small explosion burst from the pipe, sending a puff of smoke into the air. Karen screamed. The backhoe operator stumbled back, arms shielding his face. The sheriff swore under his breath and radioed it in. "Dispatch, we've got a damaged underground line, minor electrical sparks. Send fire just in case." I stared at the wreckage, stunned. This woman had just accidentally sparked a fire risk, on my ranch, with no permit, no permission, and nothing but a fake map and an oversized ego. And still I had a feeling this wasn't her final move. That afternoon, once the fire crew inspected and confirmed there was no immediate danger, I called in my own crew to fix the broken conduit. It cost me over $3,000 to repair. I told no one, but installed 4 new cameras around the perimeter of my land. By evening, everything was calm again. Or so I thought. At 2:41 a.m. that night, my phone buzzed, security alert, motion at the south fence. I pulled up the feed, and there she was. Karen, in dark leggings and a hoodie this time, flashlight in hand, climbing over a broken fence post like she was in a spy movie. I watched in stunned silence as she tiptoed toward the side of my barn, the one where the spigot used to be, and began digging. Digging with a spoon. "Are you kidding me?" I whispered, already putting my boots back on. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff again. "Tucker, she's back. This time she's trespassing with cutlery." He groaned. "Be there in 10. By the time the sheriff arrived, I was standing by my gate with my arms crossed and my dogs by my side. Karen was still hunched over like a raccoon, muttering and jabbing at the dirt. When the squad car lights hit her, she froze. "You don't understand," she yelled, standing upright. "I need that line. I've already rerouted my indoor plumbing." "You've done what?" I asked. "My house, my pipes, my sink is connected to your line." I blinked. "You connected your home plumbing to a stolen ranch water line?" She held her ground. "You shouldn't have cut it off. That was a violent act. You forced my hand." The deputy pulled out his handcuffs. "No, you can't do this," she shrieked as they led her away. "My brother's a lawyer. You'll regret this." But as the squad car pulled away and the dust settled over my gravel driveway again, I finally let out a breath. Peace. Maybe. Not even close. Because the very next morning, I got a certified letter delivered to my door. It was from the Sunset Ridge Neighborhood Council, a group I didn't even know existed until that moment. They were officially demanding a public hearing about shared infrastructure rights. And the kicker? It was scheduled to take place on my ranch. I held the letter in my hand like it was radioactive. "Dear Mr. Jacob Miller, this is an official notification from the Sunset Ridge Neighborhood Council. You are hereby requested to attend a mandatory public hearing on your property at 10 a.m. this Saturday, to address urgent concerns regarding community infrastructure access, specifically your well, water lines, and related systems, which affect shared neighborhood health and sustainability. I stopped reading. They were holding a public hearing, on my land, about my well. I flipped the page. Please prepare to provide documentation of water rights, well ownership, underground pipe layouts, and long-term water usage plans. The HOA leadership will be accompanied by concerned homeowners and their representatives. Failure to attend may result in legal escalation. I stared at the envelope again. No signature, no legal stamp, no court seal, just a Sunset Ridge logo that looked like it was made on Microsoft Paint. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. I called my lawyer. David picked up after 2 rings. Tell me this is about the letter. Just got it, I said. They want a public hearing on my land, Saturday. He sighed. They can't legally do that. Not without your consent. That's your private ranch. This isn't a municipal zone. Well, they sure think they can. Do you want to shut it down ahead of time? He asked. No, I said slowly. I want to host it. On my terms. There was a pause. You're planning something. Let's just say, I'm tired of being the quiet neighbor. The next 2 days were chaos. I mowed the field near the southern fence, set up folding chairs I borrowed from the local rec center, and even printed name tags. But I also mounted 2 new solar-powered floodlights, added hidden microphones around the area, and stacked boxes of copies, legal copies of my property deeds, water drilling permits, and a notarized affidavit from the state hydrologist confirming my well was 100% private and self-contained. Oh, and I set up a surprise. A projection screen aimed right at the meeting spot with a laptop nearby. Saturday morning rolled in bright and early, and with it dozens of Sunset Ridge residents trickled onto my property. Karen, of course, arrived last, wearing a white pantsuit, pearls, and a headset mic, like she was running a TED Talk. Behind her was her brother, Brian Brewster, the lawyer. He wore a smug expression and carried a leather briefcase like it was filled with secrets. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. I greeted them with the biggest smile I could fake. Welcome, neighbors, I said. Please take a seat. This is, after all, my land. Karen shot daggers with her eyes. Don't get comfortable. This isn't about hospitality. It's about justice. She took the center spot in front of the crowd and tapped her mic. Residents of Sunset Ridge, she began dramatically. We are gathered here today because of an egregious abuse of shared natural resources by Mr. Jacob Miller, who, despite living adjacent to our community, has denied us access to vital water supplies that many of us have quietly relied upon for years. I raised my hand. Karen, question. How many of those quiet users had permission to use that water? She ignored me. And not only did Mr. Miller shut off water lines that many Sunset Ridge homes accidentally accessed through historical overlap, but he did so violently, damaging property and causing emotional harm to elderly residents and children. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen continued. We therefore demand a 30% share of his well capacity and require that he reinstate the southern line immediately. Excuse me, I said, walking to the front. Can I respond now? Brian stood. As her legal counsel, I advise you tread carefully, Mr. Miller. Good, I smiled, because I love careful. I clicked a button on the laptop, and on the giant screen behind me, a video began to play. It was Karen, climbing the fence, at 2:41 a.m., with a spoon. The footage was crisp, time-stamped, and completely damning. Her voice could be heard whispering, I know it's here somewhere. The crowd gasped. Next came the footage of her ordering the backhoe operator to dig on my land, holding up a fake Google Earth printout and calling herself the enforcer of emergency ordinance. Then finally, the 911 call. Hello? Yes. He's threatening me with a wrench. I paused the video. The crowd was silent. Brian was frozen. Karen's jaw was twitching. I don't think we need a hearing, I said calmly. But in case anyone's confused, I brought copies. I handed out the documents, proof of ownership, boundaries, and independent confirmation that my ranch had zero legal obligation to the HOA. Now, I said, looking directly at Karen, unless someone here has a real court order, this meeting is over. Karen's mic screeched. She ripped it off and threw it on the ground. He's manipulating the narrative, she yelled. He edited the footage. He provoked me. Brian tried to stand. Mr. Miller, my client believes you've caused emotional distress and long-term water deprivation. Oh, really? I said. Then why did I find this in her backyard yesterday? I walked over and lifted a bucket from under the table. Inside it, a portable electric pump and a set of splitter valves, the same ones that had been connected to the illegal hose weeks before. I'm done playing nice, I said. If I find one more piece of your equipment on my property, if one more hose crosses my line, I will press charges. And next time, Karen, I won't ask the sheriff to be gentle. That's when Karen snapped. She lunged again, this time not at me, but at the projector. She grabbed the laptop and flung it to the ground, screaming, "You think you've won? This isn't over." Sheriff Tucker, who had been standing quietly by the fence, stepped forward. "That's enough, Karen." "No," she shouted, trying to kick over the table. "He's the criminal, he's a menace, he's—" She froze mid-rant and slowly turned to look at the projector she had smashed. Smoke curled up from the screen. Sparks popped at the edge of the circuit board. Then, boom! A small explosion knocked her backward onto the grass, singeing her pantsuit and lighting the edge of her clipboard on fire. Neighbors screamed. Someone dumped a thermos of coffee on the flames. Karen rolled in the dirt, shrieking, my hair's burning." It wasn't. But the smoke was enough. The sheriff cuffed her on the spot. "Karen Brewster, you're under arrest for destruction of property and unlawful assembly." She flailed. "My brother's a lawyer. I am the HOA." But nobody listened, not even Brian. He quietly backed away, briefcase limp at his side, and disappeared into the crowd without a word. I stood in the silence, staring at the burned projector, the still smoking table, and the stunned neighbors who finally saw her for who she was. But even as the dust settled, I had a feeling this wasn't Karen's final act. And I was right, because just 3 days later, I got a visit from Child Protective Services. You read that right. Where do you think this is going? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, because this story is about to flip everything you thought you knew. I opened the door and came face to face with a tall woman in a navy blue blazer, clipboard in hand and a serious expression on her face. "Mr. Jacob Miller?" she asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously, one hand still on the door. "I'm Miranda Clark. I'm with Child Protective Services. We received a report that you have minors on the property in unsafe conditions and may be engaging in endangerment behaviors related to utilities, specifically water and electricity." I blinked. "Minors?" I said slowly. "There are no kids living here." She narrowed her eyes. "You're saying you don't currently have any children on site?" "Ms. Clark," I said, stepping out onto the porch, "I live alone. Just me, my horses, and my 2 dogs. No kids. Never have." She frowned, flipped a few pages on her clipboard, and said, "According to the anonymous tip we received, you've been sheltering 2 minors in your barn without plumbing or electricity, and that you recently damaged water systems critical to their health." It hit me like a slap. Karen. This was Karen's doing. She'd made a false report to CPS about kids to try and get me in trouble. I took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I invite you to walk the property with me," I said calmly. "There's nothing hidden. You can check the barn, the pasture, even my basement if you want. But I promise you there are no children here." Miranda looked uncertain, but she nodded. "All right, let's have a look." I led her around the property, showing her every corner of the ranch. The main barn, empty except for hay and tools. My detached garage, just my old truck and some saddle gear. My house, immaculate, with functioning water, plumbing, and no sign of any minors. Miranda slowly lowered her clipboard. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. I had to follow protocol. It's clear you're not hiding anyone." "I understand," I said, "but someone's trying to weaponize your agency to harass me, and I have a good idea who it is." She sighed. "Unfortunately, anonymous reports can come from anyone and we're obligated to check them out. But I will be making a note of this incident, and if it happens again, we'll be looking more closely at the caller, not you." She handed me a card and left. I stood there on the porch, rage simmering under my skin. Karen wasn't just trying to take my water or lie her way into my property. She was now trying to ruin my name, drag me through mud, and possibly get me arrested, with zero regard for truth. I had to do something. Later that evening, I called my buddy Cliff. He worked in the county records office. "Cliff," I said, "I need you to look into someone for me. Karen Brewster. I want to know everything she's filed in the last 6 months. Permits, complaints, code violations, anything." "You got it," he said. "Give me 48 hours." While I waited, I decided to pay a visit to a few neighbors, some of the same ones who showed up at that so-called hearing. First stop, Martha and Bill Jenkins. They lived 2 plots down, just inside the Sunset Ridge line. Sweet folks in their 60s. Bill used to be an engineer, and Martha baked the best peach cobbler west of the Mississippi. When I showed up, they invited me in instantly. "We're so sorry about that circus the other day," Martha said, shaking her head. "Karen said she was hosting a community awareness seminar. We had no idea she planned to humiliate you," Bill chimed in. "She's been pushing people around for months now, telling us if we don't follow her HOA rules, she'll get the county involved." I frowned. "Are there even official HOA rules?" "She wrote them herself," Bill said, sipping his iced tea. "But most of the folks here are too polite or too scared to challenge her. She tells people she's connected, threatens fines, threatens to have our homes repossessed if we don't pay dues." "She's not connected," I said. "She's desperate." Martha leaned in. "There's something you should know." She pulled out a stack of mail. At the top was a flyer. "Sunset Ridge Water Rights Proposal. Let's share resources and thrive together." Below it, in fine print, "Funded and distributed by Karen Brewster, Community Water Overseer." I nearly choked. "Community Water Overseer? She made that up," Bill said. "But the scary thing is, some folks are believing it. She's even collecting $25 per household for emergency drought prevention fees." My heart dropped. "Is she saying it's going to me?" I asked. They both nodded. "She says you're getting the money to maintain the water system, but you're hoarding it." I clenched my jaw. That was fraud, and my name was tied to it. "She's not done yet," I muttered. The next day, Cliff called. "Jake, buddy, you won't believe what I found." "Try me." "She's filed 6 noise complaints against you in the past month. Claims you host wild barn parties every Friday. Also says you've got illegal livestock and a failing septic tank." "What?" "And get this. Last week she filed a property lien on your land." My stomach dropped. "A lien?" "Fake one, based on a doctored deed. She uploaded it to a bogus county web portal she made herself. But here's the kicker." "Hit me." "She's been applying for a community infrastructure grant, using your ranch as well as part of her application." I was speechless. "She's trying to get government funding using my land?" "Yep, and the application's pending review at the State Water Board." That was it. No more warnings, no more speeches. I printed everything, every complaint, every photo, every document Cliff sent me, and put it in a binder. Then I drove straight to the sheriff's department and filed official charges: trespassing, harassment, attempted fraud, filing false reports, defamation, property tampering, and impersonation of a public official. I handed them everything. Sheriff Tucker looked through the file, nodding slowly. "This is serious. We're opening a full investigation." And just when I thought I might get a break, that same night around 11 p.m., I was in bed reading when Sage began barking like mad. I checked the cameras, and there she was, Karen, in her pajamas, with a crowbar, prying at my water meter box in the dark. I launched out of bed so fast I nearly tripped over Sage, who was still barking and growling at the door. Gunnar joined in, his deep barks vibrating through the walls as I threw on jeans, grabbed my flashlight, and slipped my phone into my back pocket. The outside air hit me like ice. There she was, Karen, in full pajamas, crouched beside my water meter box at the side of the house, trying to wedge it open with a crowbar. She hadn't even noticed the motion sensor light flooding her with a golden spotlight like she was performing on a stage. I took a deep breath and shouted, "Drop it, Karen!" She froze, whipped her head around like a deer in headlights, and then, like a cartoon villain, tried to yank the entire water meter off the pipe. "What are you doing?" I yelled again as I stomped toward her. "Are you insane?" Karen screamed, and backed away, crowbar in hand like she was about to joust. "I have a right," she shouted. "This water isn't yours. You don't own the ground, you don't own nature." "This is my private well, Karen," I said through gritted teeth, pointing at the sign above the pump box. "It's not city water, not public, and that's a felony you're committing right now." "I'm taking what's mine." Before she could swing the crowbar again, I held up my phone. "Smile, you're on 8 cameras." She froze, then took off running. I sprinted after her, dogs barking, lights flicking on from the neighbors' homes beyond the ridge. She dashed toward the fence like she was trying to scale the Berlin Wall, lost her flip-flop in the gravel, and face-planted into a patch of goatweed. By the time I caught up, she was sobbing and screaming at the same time. "You ruined me. You ruined everything. I had plans. You thief. You narcissist. I was meant to run this land." "What?" I yanked the crowbar out of her hands, dropped it on the ground, and said, "You need help, Karen. Real help." Blue and red lights flashed down the gravel road. Sheriff Tucker had arrived. "Put your hands where I can see them, Karen," he called out as he stepped out of his vehicle. "We warned you. This time there's no walking away." Karen looked up at him, mascara smeared, hair sticking out in all directions, hands trembling. "He's a tyrant, a greedy, heartless tyrant. You should be arresting him." Tucker didn't flinch. "You're under arrest for vandalism, attempted sabotage, trespassing, and violating a court-issued cease and desist," he said as the deputy cuffed her. "No! No! No!" she screamed. "You can't do this to me!" She thrashed and kicked, but it was no use. They put her in the back of the cruiser. As the car pulled away, I finally exhaled. My dog settled down at my feet. The next morning, I received a call from Cliff. "You're going to want to sit down for this." "What now?" "Karen filed 8 different documents with the county claiming your ranch was unfit for habitation. She also applied to have the property seized under a fake eminent domain clause from 1997. I rubbed my temples. How was she this organized? "She wasn't," Cliff said. "She just copied and pasted legal forms from a real estate website and changed the names." "She wanted my ranch," I said slowly, letting the words settle in. "This whole time, it was about the land." It gets worse. Her brother? Not even a licensed attorney in this state. He was disbarred 5 years ago for forgery. My jaw dropped. "And the HOA?" I asked. "Not a real HOA," Cliff confirmed. "Not registered with the county. Just a Facebook group, some flyers, and a lot of threats. She built the entire thing on nothing, a fake empire." Everything clicked into place. All those crazy stunts, the flyers, the secret hose, the fake court hearing. She had been trying to bully me out of my land, create enough chaos, enough drama, that I'd give up and walk away. Because she wanted it. My ranch. All 30 acres of it. Probably to rezone it for development. Or to impress the fake HOA. Or just because she was obsessed with control. But now, she was gone. With official charges filed and a criminal investigation opened, Karen wasn't coming back anytime soon. The next few weeks were quiet. No shouting, no late-night trespassers, no random 911 calls. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could actually enjoy my land. My horses were calmer, my dog slept better, and I felt peace. Until one morning, I opened the mailbox and found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly typed. You may have won this round, but this land doesn't belong to you, it never did. Sleep with one eye open. The HOA president. My fingers tightened around the letter. I looked out over the fields. The sun was rising. My dogs barked in the distance, and I knew. Karen might be behind bars, but this war, it wasn't over yet. The letter stayed in my hands for a full 5 minutes before I moved. I turned it over, checking the back. Nothing. No smudges, no lipstick prints, no fingerprints. Just clean, centered text in black ink. One line chilled me more than the rest. Sleep with one eye open. I wasn't a paranoid man by nature. After all, I'd spent most of my life as a firefighter, where fear meant hesitation, and hesitation got people killed. But standing there on the porch with that note, watching the wind shift through the ranch grass, I realized something bone deep. This wasn't just a crazy neighbor problem anymore, this was personal. Karen may have been in jail, but someone else, was still out there carrying the torch. Probably someone from her little fake HOA cult. Or worse, her disbarred brother, Brian, lurking behind the scenes. I locked the letter in my safe and made a call to Sheriff Tucker. He arrived by noon with a deputy and scanned the note carefully. You ever see this kind of behavior before? I asked him. Once, he said. Guy had a neighbor who wanted his boat dock, faked a petition, poisoned the man's dogs, even flattened his tires. Ended up being more than a property dispute. Was about dominance. People like that, when they lose power, they don't let go. They escalate. I nodded. What do I do now? You stay alert, and you document everything. If this gets worse, we involve state authorities. I took his advice to heart. That night, I upgraded all my cameras, added 2 drones to patrol the perimeter at intervals, and mounted motion detectors near the well, the barn, and the side gate, where Karen had snuck in weeks before. For a while, things stayed quiet. Until the fire. It started small. A brush pile near my south fence suddenly burst into flames just after 2 a.m. Luckily, I had installed heat sensors, and one of them sent an alert straight to my phone. By the time I raced out with an extinguisher and my dogs behind me, it was already spreading fast, too fast to be natural. The smell of kerosene filled the air. Someone had intentionally started it. I managed to control it before it hit the barn, but not before a section of the pasture fencing was scorched black. The fire department confirmed it. Arson. The sheriff returned with a new warrant, and we began checking the footage. The camera near the south fence had been spray-painted black before the fire started. But my drone? It had caught a grainy figure in a hood, dumping liquid on the brush pile with a sloshing red can in hand. They were smart, but not smart enough. The deputy managed to zoom in on a patch, a faded logo on the hoodie sleeve. It read, Sunset Ridge HOA Volunteer Patrol. I couldn't believe it. They were still wearing the uniform of a group that didn't legally exist. The sheriff wasted no time. They raided 2 houses in Sunset Ridge within 24 hours. One belonged to a man named Daniel Griggs, a quiet, reclusive type who had been one of Karen's earliest recruits. The other, you guessed it, Brian Brewster. They found documents linking both men to a plan called Phase 2 Recovery, which included multiple maps of my ranch, printed water permits with forged state seals, flyers titled Public Seizure Now or Never, and a list of names under the title HOA Expansion Targets. My name was in bold at the top. The sheriff sat me down after the arrests. You were their number 1, the keystone. They thought if they could take your ranch, they could claim the whole perimeter as HOA territory. That bogus lien they filed, it was supposed to spook you into selling. I was stunned. All this, just for land? It was deeper than that. It was about power, control. Karen had built a fake world where she was queen. When I said no, it shattered her illusion. and she was willing to burn everything down to rebuild it. The court moved fast. Karen faced multiple counts of fraud, trespassing, filing, false claims, conspiracy to commit arson. Yes, Daniel flipped and gave them everything. Attempted property seizure. Brian was disbarred in 3 states now, facing years in federal prison for impersonation, forgery, and conspiracy. Sunset Ridge HOA, dissolved by the county. Every member received cease and desist letters, and the Facebook group disappeared overnight. But I wasn't celebrating yet. There was still damage, scorched land, broken trust, legal fees, and a reputation I had to rebuild in the wider community, thanks to Karen's lies. Then something happened I didn't expect. A knock on my gate. It was a group of Sunset Ridge residents, families, couples, even some folks who had shown up to that ridiculous hearing. One of them, Martha Jenkins, stepped forward with a basket of muffins and a folded note. "We're sorry," she said, voice soft. "We let her speak for us. We believed her lies. But after everything that's come out, we know better now." I opened the note. It read, "Jacob, we respect your land, your boundaries, and your peace. Thank you for standing your ground. For all of us. You showed us what happens when one person stands up to madness with calm and courage. Your neighbors." For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't in a long while. Peace. These people weren't enemies. They were just scared, misled. I looked out across my ranch, the wide open fields, the horses grazing quietly under a blue Arizona sky, and smiled. Karen was gone. The HOA was gone. And my land was mine again, completely, fully, and forever. Let us know where you were watching from. And if you love this wild ride, drop a comment and share with someone who's had their own HOA nightmare. See you in the next one.